Everyone in the bottled water industry was selling purity, wellness, and mountain springs until one brand ditched the Zen and slapped skulls on aluminum cans. When you normally think of bottled water, you picture plastic bottles, blue logos, and everything calm and peaceful. Evian, Fiji, and so many more brands fit this description and have monopolized the bottled water industry. But then came Liquid Death, a brand that said, what if we put water, not vodka, not beer, but water in a tallboy can, slapped a flaming skull on the front, and called it Liquid Death? Everyone laughed at the idea until it became a $700 million brand. And here's the twist. They didn't invent a new drink. They didn't discover magical hydration crystals. They just rebranded the world's most basic product in a way no one saw coming. So, how does a company sell what's literally free in your kitchen for more than a can of Coke? Let's take a look at everything Liquid Death did right on its journey to becoming the first punk water brand. Every iconic brand always has a quirky founder with a backstory to add to its lore. For Liquid Death, that mad genius was Mike Cesario. He was a creative director with a background in hardcore punk, skateboarding, and advertising for Netflix and other major brands. In 2017, he had a ridiculous idea. Put water in a can that looks like it wants to kill you. But this wasn't just for shock value. Cesario noticed something. Health-conscious people at festivals and concerts would hide their water bottles because they didn't look cool. Meanwhile, everyone else was double-fisting energy drinks and beer. Water just didn't vibe. So what if water looked like beer? What if it felt dangerous, rebellious, and even fun? That was the seed, the idea behind a brand that would make $700 million in the blink of an eye. And the mission was simple: make drinking water feel cool. No Zen waterfalls, no yoga poses. Just punk, metal, and lots of attitude. On his list of names for the product was the name Liquid Death. Cesario literally tested it with Facebook ads against softer sounding names. Guess which one crushed? But turning a viral joke into a company? That's a different tale entirely. Liquid Death didn't appeal to investors. They didn't see why anyone would be interested in punk water. Time and again, they passed on the opportunities to invest in it. But Cesario kept pushing. In 2019, he finally secured a small seed round, just enough to start production and get Liquid Death into the consumer market. This audience was mainly the tattooed, the sweaty, the heavily pierced, the metalheads, and the skate parks. That's where Liquid Death started picking up traction to become the viral sensation that it is. Now, if Liquid Death was a masterclass in branding, it was like a Harvard degree in marketing. Let's start with the name itself. Liquid Death. That's a product name that catches your eye from any shelf or fridge. It demands attention. It dares you to ask, wait, what is that? And then the company hits you with the tagline, murder your thirst. The shock value from the name and tagline alone was enough to have people picking Liquid Death from the shelves. The genius is in the fact that it's water. The juxtaposition makes it funny. You're not drinking poison, you're just hydrating. It's satire disguised as branding. And the marketing? It went beyond just edgy. It was going against everything the beverage industry had been doing for decades. Their ads are anti-corporate fever dreams. Imagine everything you wouldn't want to do to mark water and then do it. One campaign featured a grandma cursing out plastic bottles. Another starred Wiz Khalifa promoting Liquid Death with his Kush brand. They even made a kid's book about plastic pollution that ends with a sea turtle killing a human. People were fed up with the propaganda and boring marketing they had been fed by the bottled water and beverage industry. Every ad, every campaign was the same. Flowy springs, fresh water, and a happy life. Liquid Death changed all that. Drinking water didn't have to be so boring. This type of marketing took risks, and these risks paid off. Audience engagement was off the charts. Part of the magic also had to do with social media strategy. Liquid Death went viral not by running polished campaigns, but by being memeable, chaotic, and very shareable. They even launched a Liquid Death Country Club that sold memberships for $1,500 with no actual club, just streetwear, exclusivity, and bragging rights. And somehow it sold out. It gave people a culture to be part of. And that was something that really blew up in the social media age. But the brand wasn't built just on LOLs. There was a mission underneath the madness: death to plastic. Every can is made from recyclable aluminum, which is something most bottled water brands can't claim. And Liquid Death donates a portion of its profits to plastic reduction charities. So while they're trolling the entire beverage aisle, they're also tapping into Gen Z and millennial values of authenticity, sustainability, and irony. It's punk rock with a conscience. Add in strategic endorsements like Tony Hawk selling skateboards infused with his own blood, and collaborations with bands, pro wrestlers, and influencers. And Liquid Death became less of a drink and more of a cultural flex. This wasn't about hydration. This was about identity and a business model that would pave the way for future companies. Most people forget that Liquid Death isn't just about being edgy and cool. Behind the brand is a smart, well-run business. Let's start with the basics. This is premium-priced water, a commodity product dressed in luxury streetwear. At $1.99 to $2.49 per can, it's often more expensive than other waters. But that price isn't just for the product, it's actually for the experience. You're not buying plain water, you're buying Liquid Death. And where do they start selling it? Not grocery stores, not gas stations. No, they place their products in places where tallboy cans make sense, and where branding actually lands. Think music venues, bars, and tattoo shops. From there, they expanded into retail. Whole Foods, Target, Publix, 7-Eleven, and more. By mid-2023, Liquid Death was in over 60,000 retail locations. More than just trying to sell in stores, Liquid Death focused on showing up on people's screens and turning itself into a culture that people wanted to join. Liquid Death tapped into an often ignored aspect of sales, direct-to-consumer e-commerce. Their website wasn't just a store for canned water, it was your go-to place to get in on the trend. Hilarious product descriptions, absurd blog posts, and merch drops made it feel like an influencer brand. And yes, Liquid Death focused heavily on merch, not as an afterthought, but as a serious revenue stream. Hoodies, tees, koozies, even skateboards. In 2022 alone, Liquid Death made over $3 million from merchandise sales. For context, that's more than some indie fashion brands like Kaiser Clark, Tier, or Yoni make combined. Then came their product expansion. Every good business meets its end by not evolving, and Liquid Death wanted to be immortal. After water, they launched flavored sparkling water with names like Severed Lime, Mango Chainsaw, and Bury It Alive. Again, it was the same hydration, same humor, new sales. They've since expanded into iced tea, with names like Armless Palmer, and continue to explore functional beverages. And while competitors are trying to look clean, clinical, and minimal, Liquid Death is doubling down on chaos. And it's working. Liquid Death's branding may have been on point, and the merch was selling out faster than any influencer on the internet. But how does canned water that's sold in tattoo parlors and punk clubs expand its audience base to reach a $700 million evaluation? The answer is simple: venture capital. Lots of it. Let's rewind to 2019, Liquid Death's real takeoff. That year, Liquid Death secured its first major investment from Science Inc., the LA-based startup studio behind Dollar Shave Club. They saw what others didn't: a category-disrupting brand in a sea of sameness. That early injection of $1.6 million helped Liquid Death scale production and distribution. From there, things began to snowball. In 2020, just as the pandemic shut down bars and live events, Liquid Death's core market, they did something wild. They pivoted to e-commerce and dominated the field. People were ordering water online, and Liquid Death leaned all the way in. While most beverage brands struggled, Liquid Death turned quarantine into a growth phase. Orders exploded. Viral content kept people laughing and buying. And suddenly, canned water was a stay-at-home flex. They even marketed to children because being cool is what made them sell millions. By 2021, they raised $15 million in a Series C round, led by Velvet Sea Ventures, bringing total funding to $45 million. At this point, celebrities started to pile in. Tony Hawk, Steve Aoki, and Whitney Cummings, to name a few. Even Live Nation joined the party, locking in exclusive venue distribution deals. As soon as 2022 rolled in, Liquid Death was in a league of its own. They landed shelf space in major retailers like Target and 7-Eleven. Their total funding ballooned to over $130 million, and by the end of the year, they were pulling in $130 million in annual revenue. Let that sink in. It was over $100 million in sales for a startup brand selling canned water. In 2023, Liquid Death expanded internationally, starting with Canada and the UK. By mid-2024, they'd broken into Europe and parts of Asia, with global retail and DTC channels firing on all cylinders. Their last reported valuation? $700 million. The case of Liquid Death isn't just a one-hit wonder of startup success. This is a branding case study in real time. But all successful ventures come with their fair share of challenges. In an industry as saturated as bottled water, you don't make a mock metal water brand without getting dragged. And Liquid Death? They took many hits. The industry didn't accept Liquid Death because it made all their products look bad, but all the criticism was disguised as concern for the public. The core complaint? You're charging $2 for water in a costume. Liquid Death never denied that its product is costly. But the counterpoint was simple. People aren't just paying for hydration. They're paying for a brand they connect with, an identity, a joke they're in on. But still, that price point created a lot of backlash. Budget-conscious consumers weren't grabbing a tallboy of mountain water when they could get a 24-pack of Kirkland Signature for the same cost. Then there was the sustainability debate. Liquid Death has made death to plastic one of its pillars. And although aluminum is technically more recyclable than plastic, critics argue that just because it's recyclable doesn't mean people actually recycle it. Plus, mining and producing aluminum isn't exactly gentle on the environment either. The brand claims to use 100% recyclable aluminum cans and partners with nonprofit organizations to reduce plastic waste. That's good, but some eco-watchdogs wanted more than marketing. They wanted to see just how Liquid Death's aluminum and water were sourced.
The brand started saying that their whole business was sustainable, and I would fucking kill Liquid Death.
So is it truly sustainable? Depends on who you ask. The branding is loud, but the data is still up for debate. And then there's the risk of oversaturation. Liquid Death created a new category, and now everyone wants in. Competing hardcore water brands have started popping up. Big beverage companies are watching closely, and you can bet they're trying to create their own edgy spin-offs. Can you imagine if a company as cool as Monster decided to launch a canned water line? It would sell out instantly. Everyone was wondering the same thing. If Liquid Death stops being novel, will it still sell? That's the question every disruptive brand eventually faces. Can you be weird and mainstream at the same time? Although the future of the industry niche that Liquid Death opened up is murky, you can't deny that it puts forward a unique and successful business model. Whether you love them or think they're just smart marketers in skull t-shirts, Liquid Death has done something few companies ever pull off. They took something available for decades and turned it into a bestseller at stores. So what can we learn from their rise? Lesson 1. Different wins. In a category full of serenity and pure life vibes, Liquid Death went metal, and consumers paid attention. Disruption doesn't always mean inventing something new. Sometimes it means reframing something old. Lesson 2. Brand identity matters. From the name to the font to the merch, Liquid Death is laser focused on its identity. It doesn't tone down and play it safe. It doesn't try to please everyone. And in doing so, it wins diehard fans. Lesson 3. Authentic marketing works. Liquid Death speaks the language of its audience fluently. Skaters, gamers, punks, and goths are communities that don't trust corporate gloss. Liquid Death meets them with humor, self-awareness, and total commitment to the bit. Lesson 4. Growth needs balance. As the company expands, it faces a tricky path. Keep the brand edgy, but scale responsibly. Sell at target, but don't turn into a target. It's a tightrope act that most businesses can't get the hang of. And finally, Lesson 5. Sustainability isn't a side project. Today's consumers want more than a clever slogan. They want to know their purchases matter. Liquid Death has made big moves in that space, but keeping credibility means providing clarity on sustainability, not avoiding it. Like and subscribe for more deep dives into companies that refuse to play by the rules. Liquid Death didn't reinvent water. They didn't invent new tech. They didn't raise billions from day one. They didn't even put out a Super Bowl ad. All they did was take an already existing niche and rebrand it to fit the modern consumer. In a world of safe marketing and bland packaging, Liquid Death went the other way. They weaponized irony, they made hydration look like rebellion, and they turned the most boring product on earth into a $700 million cult brand. What they've proven is simple. In a saturated market, personality sells. Disruption doesn't need to come from innovation. It can come from imagination. And now, the question isn't, can a water brand go viral? It's, what else can be rebranded this way? Because if Liquid Death can do this with water, then what's next?